All right, Nick, let's talk about the Green Bay Packers. I think coming into this season, Green Bay already had a very good offense. They had a lot of young players coming up the ranks. We were very impressed by Jordan Love, but they made some key additions through the draft that I think potentially, believe it or not, could make this offense even better. Let's get into the article about one of these guys, and we'll talk more about it on the other side. This, of course, is from over on 32 Beat Writers, one of our new favorite follows on Twitter. A lot of great stories coming out of there. So it says, following the NFL draft, we heard both LaFleur and Adam Stenavich, I believe, say to the same effect that Lloyd brings a different element to this position group for Green Bay. Talking about Marshon Lloyd, of course. After a short time watching Lloyd on the practice field, you see what LaFleur and Stenavich were referring to, with him bringing a level of burst and acceleration that other backs just don't have. The focus for Lloyd during the time off between minicamp and training camp was going to be on the pass catching aspect of the game. Nick, I think these are some really interesting points to bring up, some very interesting holes maybe that Marshon Lloyd will fill in this backfield and give him potentially a chance to break through on this roster, get some starting reps. I'm curious though what your thoughts are, but Green Bay fans, in the comments section below, this is an interesting one because I can think of a couple of guys that are pretty high up there, but let us know in the comments below. Who is your favorite Packers running back of all time? There's a couple of guys that stand out to me, but let us know who is your favorite in the comment section below. And while you're there, check the description below the video if you want some great NFL reading for this summer. We've got a lot of recommendations down there through some Amazon links. So check out, we got books on coaches, autobiographies, books break down the game of football. Maybe you have some books that just cover the history of the game if you love history. So check those out in the description below. But Nick, what is your thoughts on Marshon Lloyd?
Look, if you look at this Packers offense as a whole, one of the things that really has been missing is a serious, legitimate receiving threat out of the backfield that could create matchup nightmares for opposing defenses. We know Jacobs is obviously still a great, talented runner. We know Dillon, being the physical presence that he is, can be a very powerful runner as well. We know they've got a great cadre of wide receivers, some good young tight ends. Obviously, Love spectacular. LaFleur is a great play caller. Check a lot of boxes except a legitimate receiving threat out of the backfield. And if you look at the numbers for Jacobs and Dillon last season, according to their PFF receiving grades, not great. Jacobs graded out as a 51 in the receiving department. That's obviously not too hot. AJ Dillon was 68, a little bit better, very solid, respectable, but far from inducing fear in opposing defenses. But then you look at Marshon Lloyd. He's a guy that at USC, University of Southern California, what he was able to do in limited receiving reps in just 13 receptions, small sample size. I know he averaged 18 yards per catch, right? This was a guy that was a big play threat out of the backfield for the Trojans. And I think that's exactly what the Packers envision him being in their offense, again, with limited reps, because obviously there's only one football, a lot of great players. But the fact that Lloyd was able to be so explosive and dynamic at USC with limited reps, I think speaks to what he will do in this Packers offense. And this is actually what Matt LaFleur had to say talking about Lloyd here. He said he definitely can be a weapon out of the backfield. I love all the measurables. He's a 220-pound back that runs 4.4 and can run routes out of the backfield. I think he could be a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses. This is courtesy of ESPN. So again, LaFleur is saying exactly what we're talking about here, that Lloyd will be a guy who can create all kinds of matchup discontinuities in defenses, allow him, Lloyd, to create big plays, but also allow the Packers to exploit opportunities for other players as well. And you look at a guy who can generate big plays out of the backfield, Jacobs and Dillon, not really that in the NFL. Jacobs averages 7.4 yards per catch. Dillon averages a little bit better, about 9. So again, solid receivers out of the backfield, not abysmally terrible, but they're not legitimate matchup threats. Lloyd is, and I think he's going to have a huge impact in his Packers offense because of that.
Yeah, Nick, and I think Marshon Lloyd did a lot of great stuff at college. He actually went from USC to USC, so played at both of the USCs. I think he was very interesting talent at both schools, but you brought up another point as well, the explosiveness factor out of the backfielder in the article brought up too. I don't think the Packers really do have an explosive runner in the backfield because you look at Josh Jacobs, you look at his explosive runs, which are runs over 10 plus yards last season. He had 9, which you might say, okay, that's not too bad. But we look at someone who I would consider to be an explosive runner in the NFL. I think Raheem Mostert, Miami Dolphins. He had 30 explosive runs last year. So obviously a true explosive guy, a little bit more than 9 explosive runs in a season. So I think that's another aspect that Marshon Lloyd can bring to this backfield, a guy who can really break it loose. He's not quite as fast as the next guy I'm going to say. And I don't think on paper he's Devon A-Chain speed worthy, but I think he could be the A-Chain to a guy like Mostert. Mostert explosive in his own right. Devon A-Chain brought another level to this offense. He wasn't the full-time guy. Obviously, he even got hurt last season, but he was a very good complementary piece to a guy like Mostert. I think Lloyd comes into this offense. Jacobs, Dillon, very different type of running backs than a guy like Marshon Lloyd. I think he can bring a lot to this backfield in the sense, like you brought up. I think that's probably the most important thing is if he can hone in his catching skills and be a valuable pass catcher out of the backfield, that's going to be great. But also, if they switch it up and he's able to break off some explosive runs, I think he can add that aspect to this offense as well. And we talk about this all the time. I think the Packers hit it out of the park because not only did they pick up a good player, they picked up a guy who could fit into their scheme or the niche in this backfield. They found what they were missing in a running back and brought him in to this running back room, and I think that is more valuable than people can imagine.